to the SPL Finch here as we move into our third and final set of the day. And on one of these longer days, the only thing keeping me going is the unparalleled comfort of my Maxonomic Smite gaming chair. This is something that is not just for me and the other elites of the world. If anyone's out there to buy them, one of the elites, you can also purchase one of these. Pick one up, get an exclusive in-game award when you order an official Smite chair, and you too can have the unparalleled comfort to stay on the desk all day here, even with Mifflin in your ear, every free moment that you get. I'm joined here by Gore Miser on the desk. It's not Mifflin, thank God, bothering me in my nightmares. Gore, how are you doing here today, bud? We got one more set of action to watch. This is SSG up against Radiance.
I'm doing great, also in my Smite Maxonomic chair, so just as comfortable as you are. Yeah, it's very nice. My favorite thing on days like this is actually the pillow, no joke, because I do tend to find myself watching the games like this. It is very comfortable, but I'm very excited as well for just the day that we've had, because we've gotten to see some things that I think are interesting. Sanguine looking a little bit better this week, but not quite to the standard. I mean, I guess they push game to Ghost Gaming to 3 games. There we go, as the words finally start flowing there. So that's already really solid, but Radiance already starting off today with a loss. Definitely not going up against an easier opponent here in SSG does kind of cultivate an interesting dynamic as we come into this, because now, you know, you see 10-2, you see 10-3 up at the very top of the standings, but that's 7-4, 6-6, and 6-6 there are really close together and almost deceptively close there between 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I think the Knights, depending on how this set goes for Radiance, are closing in on their 4th place potentially because of Sanguine, but maybe even able to jump to 3rd place, or at least see Sanguine jump up there as well. We're having some shuffling in the ranks.
No, you're absolutely right, and Space Station do have a lot on the line with this set, because that first place solely being theirs is lost if they were to lose this one, but with the way that Radiance are playing now, I just don't see it as much of a possibility, and that's me giving Space Station every bit of due respect that this team has earned. I know Slaney said it's not close up there for the best team, but I think Space Station will give them a hell of a run for their money, man. This is the best that we've got right now, them and Ghost. That's why there's that big gap between them and the standings, and the reason is because of how flexible this Space Station team is. Dardes will play anything, Cheerio will play anything, Nika will play anything to an absurd degree, man. It is tough to stop these guys when they're on their A game, and let me know if you can find some clips of them not on their A game, because I don't think I've seen it yet.
I mean, literally, the 2 losses they've had have been against Ghost Gaming. That's the only time that this team has really been able to falter, and that you've maybe found them not on their A game, right? But even here, you're getting good clips of them playing against Ghost Gaming. Vote just got a triple kill against them. So the fact that they're consistent enough to find these plays, even when things are maybe stacked against them, or we know that the results of the game that we were watching the highlights of don't quite go their way, I think is impressive more so because of what they've been able to do. They're also willing to pull out some of those weird picks. The Guan Yu just kind of showed up out of nowhere for them last week. Isis is something that they routinely go back to. Not consistent enough that you have to ban it. It also doesn't tend to perform too very well, but consistently enough that it's something that they do like to pick up.
Well, Radiance, the team that's in a slump right now, could not have stumbled their way into a more tough opponent right now here, Gore. It's going to be difficult for them to stop it, and you have seen them trying to figure out what their new identity is, right? Teams feels like it's a roulette wheel throughout all the different mages. They don't know what they want Aurora playing when Hercules is getting banned either. This is a team that is really talented, but seems to have lost their way a bit.
I mean, yeah, it really does come down to the fact that, again, they spend a few weeks, especially, I would maybe argue some meta-changing weeks from what we saw maybe being some of the highest priority. You know, they left while Cthulhu was still technically in the top of the world, and they come back. Cupid all of a sudden's doing really well. Raw's in here all of a sudden. I think Big Man Tings, we saw this actually earlier today, was able to pick up that Raw and play really well. We saw Cyclone Spin have a pretty decent game on the ROM as well, even though they end up not quite going the way they want them to, and not finding the wins they need. They are adapting, they are picking up some things, but speaking of adapting, things that weren't quite going well for them, it did exist there. Support role, Aurora, as well as adapting there in the jungle, didn't really have the games we have come to expect out of them all year in Season 7, and if that continues here, SSG are going to gobble them up.
I think that that's pretty likely, but Radiance have surprised us before. Perhaps they surprise us now as we move into the picks and bans. For game number 1, set 3, a little bit of bonus smite happening here today as we had to get some of these games rescheduled for Radiance and Space Station in that first pick spot. Now, Radiance right now, this post-break Radiance, are clearly a different team, but one of the things you enlightened us about earlier is that Radiance did seem to have an edge when they're on the order side in that first pick position. Well, they're in that second pick spot now. They're not so bad from there. They're still 57%, I think you said, but a little bit less in their favor. So we'll see if SSG can take advantage.
Yeah, a lot of the teams have that, we keep track of those stats just to be sure and know where they are, whether or not you get that win on the Order side or Chaos side. So it's always interesting to see it, but Radiance was the one with the largest deviance between the two, which was, that's why it stood out, right? Some of these teams, I think, have a little bit more losses on the Chaos side than they do the Order side, for whatever reason that might be. But it really does interest me that it was almost 20% that separated Radiance here. And so that is maybe a little foreboding as they go up against SSG. But again, it's paying attention to a lot of the picks right now. I think this is going to be more difficult than it was against the Knights for Radiance, just because of the fact that SSG are much more stylized. I think they have their own flavor that comes in, and it is not meta to the T every time, so they are going to be able to change up their picks and bans. And if Radiance don't adapt in kind, then they're going to fall pretty much apart before we even get to the game.
Yeah, and I already am very worried. They don't have any of the normal target bans you see directed towards Dardes in that middle lane. Now, SSG banned the Persephone themselves, but still, Dardes' specialty picks are out there. If he wants to grab something like the Hera or some of those other top-tier picks, they're certainly open. SSG, they're going to prioritize this Amaterasu for Nika. And listen, this dude has been killing it on this pick. Nika is one of the best solo laners we've got. Ama is the best solo laner you can pick. When you put them two together, you get success more times than not. Now Radiance gets a great chance to response here. The Cupid is still out there if they want. I don't know if they want to go back to the Cthulhu. That's not looked great, but maybe the Sun Wukong wouldn't make a bad pick here. The Sobek has been getting prioritized pretty early on here, too. If I name enough things, eventually I'll get it right, and it looks like I did stumble into the Sun Wukong.
And I like this pick. I'm a little timid about it going up against Amaterasu, just because, like you said, it's been doing well. They're 10 for 10 every game they've locked in this Amaterasu. They've won for SSG. Although we did see with Nemesis that didn't work out too well for Ghost, so maybe that might not be the best stat coming into this game for Space Station. But you also get the Hunter alongside this Wukong, who's already survivable on his own. The Hunter that is best for sieges and healing, as well as one that has been the top outside of Rom, who Radiance banned. So I think they're scooping this up. It's also been a big pick for Cyclone Spin. It's one of the biggest ones that Radiance have picked up all phase, so this has been their go-to. But you had mentioned it earlier, Finch. Dardes was left open, and I don't know, the healing from Cupid and the healing that Wukong has for himself cannot match Dardes on this Aphrodite.
No, this is scary to me if I'm a Radiance fan, and I do like the Radiance boys. It's just that they're going to have a hard time stopping Dardes's Aphrodite, man. This is about as good as it gets in terms of a player and god pairing, and this normally is permabanned away from this team because of how influential Dardes is in this pick. So a team like Radiance, who's been away for a while, maybe this one slips by them, SSG are happily going to take it.
Man, I cannot tell you how unsold on this Terra I am. Right? I think, like,
I'm very sold on not liking it.
You're going on like a sustain comp, and I am absolutely in there for Radiance in terms of survivability, although I think the Aphrodite is going to give them a run for their money. But she lost 2 games earlier. I think I just saw it down there, 11% win rate. She is not performing well. And it does feel like you're taking away from Aurora some of the strengths he normally has. And, Kuzenbo, as well as the Hercules, are taken away. Sobek was still open. There were still other, supports that filled that kind of slot of aggression. I think pull it off a lot better than the Terra. So I'm curious, like, maybe if you just keep throwing it, eventually it's going to end up working out. But as of right now, I just have not been sold on this Terra.
Well, let's take a look at these next few bans here, Gorb. The Erlong Shen being banned away from SSG, the Unbots being banned away from Radiance, both of these teams taking an eye towards the jungle role here, trying to limit what adapting and what Cheerio can do. But this is a good ban here from Radiance. Ban away this Sobek, which I think would have been worth top 3 earlier on here in the draft for either one of these teams, now gets banned, alongside SSG banning away the Hera. Now, as I mentioned, big man Tings has kind of just been playing whatever fits them in that moment. So banning away the Hera or really anything from Tings, it's kind of it's hard to know exactly what he'll pick. So just ban whatever you don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where so much is open. My mind immediately drifted back to Phase 1 and started saying, hey, Raijin could lock in here. You could also see Merlin. And there's a lot that I think he's been able to play, but we just saw Poseidon find some success. We've seen Hebo, even though I think he's actually manages to go unscathed here. Yeah, someone that's been big in the mid lane. I'm kind of surprised myself. I just assumed he was banned that came through, even though I've seen Alton of them. And he would pair pretty well with the Raven as well. I think you're lacking, maybe not damage, but burst on the side of Radiance right now. Cupid's going to be able to bring a lot. Raven can have his own amount, but it's not as big as something that a huge bursty mage could do. So I think Radiance, if they lean that way, even something like a Scylla could sell me.
Yeah, they've got some options here. Now, again, we're thinking about what Cheerio would want to grab here at this point, and that's why that Erlong was taken out, and Nemesis still available. So SSG come right back around too, and we kind of glossed over that we're getting to see Raffer play Ganesh. Remember how well he's been playing on this pick, able to use those Dharmic Pillars so effectively, the silence as well. This is scaring me because Terra likes to be able to combo her abilities together. I just don't know how that's going to happen with a Ganesh on the other side.
And I was lucky enough to get to sit down. I got to talk to Raffer a little bit about Ganesh. A lot of the supports about this Ganesh, and one of the things they were talking about around him is the fact that, yeah, his early game maybe isn't that great, but you trade it for this phenomenal late game where you have such a long, disruptive silence. Dharmic Pillars is so good. Terra's not going to be able to, abuse that lack of early game presence that he's going to have. Jingwei is going to be safe as well. I think this duo lane, at least for SSG, they're going to be able to coast into that late game and be happy because of it.
I think so too. Good luck trying to bully Jingwei Ganesh effectively. Those two are so good at buying time. And the Ganesh allows Raffer to affect the front line and back line of the fight simultaneously. Yeah. You can drop Dharmic Pillars ahead and then use the silence to peel in the back line. And it just allows someone like Raffer, who's so good at affecting multiple parts of the fight at once, to really get both of those things working here for him. Now this Merlin, which you did say could be an option, comes in here for Tings. Is that enough to pull you back towards Radiance?
I don't know, like they have a lot of sustained damage that goes over time, a lot of dots. Cupid's going to be able to hit hard late game, but they don't really have that kicker, right? The one guy that I was hoping for to be able to come in and at least either start things off or finish them fast for their team. I feel like Radiance are hoping for sustained engagements, and I don't know if SSG are going to give it to them.
I don't know either. Game number 1, though, SSG and Radiance. I'll get it down there to Mifflin and Aggro.
Thank you very much, Finch and Gormizer, Aggro and Miff on the call, as we are going to see if Radiance can stop this catastrophic slide they have been on. Miff, we had to miss a few Radiance games. Feel like they're still missing in some ways. They have really, really struggled since they returned.
Man, Aggro, I'm going to keep it a complete buck with you right now. I was on the phone a minute ago. I kind of missed P's and B's a little bit. Now that I'm looking up, it seems like Space Station just got to blind pick whatever they wanted. Darnez on the Afro, Nika on the Ama. Is that allowed?
No, it is, but it wasn't even like they top 3'd a lot of these picks. They actually got to 9th pick Nemesis. In this game, which surprised me to say the least. But at the same time, I mean, SSG is just playing at such at a pace right now that they are inheriting a lot of these best team in the league traits, like being impossible to pick and ban against. I mean, Radiance had good second phase bans. They banned Sobek Erlong, 2 gods that Space Station really love, but it just turns out to be then Ganesh and Nemesis on the back end, which is just as rough for you. I do think that the Ganesh pick in particular is one that I was going to highlight anyways, because this Terra selection for Aurora plays at both games in their early set today. They go 0 for 2 on that. Aurora really struggles to be as effective as he normally is. And now Ganesh, which is one of the classic counter picks in this matchup, I feel like Raffer is poised to have a really great game.
He really is. That counter pick being that if Terra drops down her 3 and wants to dash through it, well, there's a silence there. Good luck. You're not going to be able to get that secondary dash off, or even the first one, likely. There's such a huge dichotomy in what these two gods are able to do against each other. Raph, in particular, should be able to mitigate a lot of the strengths of this Terra. And I think this Terra pick, in general, has been a little bit of a question mark. We've seen him now play it 4 games in a row, I believe. Aurora has been struggling a little bit on it. It seems like the engage potential that he's been trying to use is blink in, drop the ultimate, drop a frenzy, and hope that they win the fight from there. But I think if that's the playstyle, there are other gods that fit that similar level of aggression that we're used to seeing from Aurora. Hercules, a warrior, even a Geb, if you're looking for the blink initiation, a Cataclysm could come in a huge way. This Terra has yet to convince me. I don't know about you.
I mean, Terra's just so good when it comes to the team fighting phase that I'm really never that mad to see a Terra. It just seems like Radiance is so split on how they want to play these team fights that it hasn't worked quite yet. So what Aurora is doing can work. It's just not with what the rest of Radiance is doing. And particularly, something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on in this set is how well Aurora, Adapting, and Benji work together as backline divers. Aurora, great at peel. I mean, he's one of the best supports to ever touch the game. He can do everything that's asked of him. But in particular, I often think of Aurora as a backline pressure sort of support player. But the way that he and Adapting and Benji have worked together, or really not worked that well together, has been a big reason why I think Radiance has struggled these last few sets. Cherry struggling to get away at a high HP total, will end up surviving, so no first blood, and it looks like he actually may have been able to confirm that blue based on Benji not picking it up, so the first invade attempt by Radiance goes empty-handed.
And to speak to your point earlier, that's Adapting and Benji trying to work together on that invade. Weren't quite able to confirm that kill. It seems like they were split up on decision-making. Adapting kind of chases out the fight, whereas Benji tries to confirm the blue buff for himself. Neither one really pans out for either of them. But they don't lose out on anything there. They're not losing out on farm. They can just back up to their own buffs. Benji doesn't even miss out on a wave. So it shouldn't be, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Radiant's still going to pull slightly ahead. At least they are able to get their own buffs there. I'd like to see a continued pressure from Adapting in this lane with Benji there. There should be a lot of chase down potential on this Amaterasu, this Sun Wukong, very good at keeping up with the opposition, and Adapting, if he's able to reposition himself behind Nika, going to make it very hard for him to escape out of these sticky situations, especially considering what's the alternative. Adapting can go into mid and try and gank an Aphrodite. Robin's got a lot of really good early game tools, but now that Afro's got her ultimate available to her, the Undying Love, it's going to make it that much harder to confirm yourself a kill there. Otherwise, you could head over into that long lane, but do you really want to gank a Jing Wei, potentially the safest hunter in the game? Adapting's got his work cut out for him this match.
Not an easy game to be a jungler, no doubt about it, but without any sort of TP for Nika, I agree that might be the lane that you want to lean on. A sprint for him picked up. Not exactly what I would think you would need against a Wukong in lane, but you look at the Cupid on the other side, that's going to help out immensely come teamfight time in response to that Fields of Love. Just a lot less TP being shown right now in the solo lane. Benji also foregoing the usual staple relic. Do you think it's that these other relics are so good? Might not have a chance to answer, as Aurora is getting CC chained immediately, gets the ultimate off, and a good ultimate from Adapting over the top, but it doesn't stop SSG from claiming first blood. Benji looking to get something back onto Dardes, but Dardes still has that Aegis available. Cherry's been left to the wolves, and Adapting gonna gobble him up to put Radiance on the board. A 1-for-1, SSG gets first blood, but they lose their jungler, whereas Radiance only lose their support. Raffer still looking to go aggressive with Nika here, and for good reason, because Benji is getting low. SSG using this Aphrodite to its effectiveness early on.
They could even, Spacestation, that is, look to invade the blue buff here, using that just sustain from the Aphrodite. Nika's already back to full health. It seems like Adapting and Benji incredibly low. Neither one of them have the ultimate available, but it seems like Nika's just content taking the small win that is first blood in favor of SSG. And that's interesting. Radiance getting aggressive inside of SSG's jungle early on. It makes sense. Cherio on this Nemesis is going to be scaling a little bit better into the late game, which means the early game should be a little bit weaker than this Ravens, and BMT was a little bit slow on the rotation, which might be why that fight doesn't go nearly as well. Aurora just getting caught out by that CC very early on. But I don't want them to slow down this pace. Utilize the tools that you have if you're on the side of Radiance. Adapting very strong, potentially the strongest god on the map right now. He should absolutely be looking for continual ganks.
Loved the play from Aurora to get the pillar down as well, because that made sure that the CC chain from SSG couldn't be perfect, that the Ganesh remove obstacles wouldn't end up knocking him up. And I think that's what Spacestation was really counting on. 1-for-1, Cherry, who's been behind a little bit in XP already in this game, stays a little bit further behind because of that. It hasn't affected his net worth, though that's really just because he's the one who got the first blood bounty. You take that extra bonus gold away, he's pretty far down to adapting right now. So you've got a small window here if you're Radiance to keep playing around adapting, and it's going to get a little bit better for you before it gets worse. I'm sure that Mace is going to be turning into a Brawlers as soon as possible.
But even then, adapting having this about 1.5 level lead over Cherio, if he doesn't use it right now in the next 3 to 4 minutes, I'm sure they're absolutely fine with that. SSG, you expect Nemesis to get outscaled in the early game at least a little bit. It's just about keeping pace. 1 level down is not crippling at all, but we already see Radiance is grouping up on this right side of the map, trying to keep pressure up, maybe work their way into this blue buff, but adapting has to walk.
Hope. Dardes gets dunked, but he had the Undying Love ready, and he's healthier for it. Now it's Aurora who's on the receiving end. Gets, again, some good damage off before he falls, but fall he will. Nika finds another one. Benji once again harassing Dardes, but once again, Dardes just far too healthy for Benji to commit. That's 2 fights in a row now where SSG just absolutely Aphrodite abuse, keep their mid laner alive, and take down the Terra.
Yeah, Radiance needs anti-heal yesterday. They gotta stop looking for these fights until the Brawler's beat stick comes through. I want Contagions, Pestilence, Onk, whatever it takes, because that's twice now that Dardas has just made it out through raw sustainability through these team fights, just hovering around 20%, dropping the Lovebirds, dragging his own HP bar all the way back up to 60. Benji goes up into the Somersault Cloud there and thinks to himself, okay, well, if I dunk him here, I might be able to find the kill. Oh, wait, he's already half health again. Oh, he's still healing. It's very difficult for them to confirm a kill onto Dardes, and I think it's been a smart response from Space Station, because Radiance has been playing around this solo lane instead of trying to bring the fight into the 3v3 of mid, but Space Station is there in numbers every single time, bringing the fight to them.
It just feels like it should be illegal for a mage to position the way Dardes did there and not only live, but end up being the team that gets ahead because of it, because he was so far forward. Just so little respect paid in that moment. Dardes has to be a little bit careful here as his kiss is down. He'll take about half his HP in poke, but again, he's Afro, not the world's biggest deal. Raffer also going to take some poke, but again, he's got Dardes there, who's playing Afro, so none of that really ultimately matters. But Radiance getting at least a little bit more aggressive near mid. The bad news for Radiance is that all of these invades, all of them failing for the record, have had an impact in the solo lane. Benji a little bit behind Nika, both in terms of net worth, though that's a very small margin, but more so in that level department. Nika's just getting stronger on the Sama.
But there is a silver lining for Radiance. With Space Station being forced to address these invades, we're starting to see a slight level disparity start to grow itself in mid. Dardes about a half level down, as well as in support, despite Aurora falling twice already in the 9 minutes, the 2 deaths on the side of his team. He's not behind Raffer at all. He was even about a level up just a moment ago. It seems like Space Station hasn't done enough to claw this lead forward.
Space Station loses an ultimate on this left-hand side. Vote uses Airstrike in order to trade with Cyclone Spin's Fields of Love. Cyclone with a small item and level advantage on this left-hand side. The ISO plays have basically worked so far for Radiance on this left-hand side. Not to discredit Vote in any way, but I think Radiance will take the 1v1 Cyclone v anybody in an extended 1v1 just about every time. Feels like Radiance have really tried to prioritize getting Cyclone Spin into comfortable lead positions, including with their picks, and first picking him things like Rom and Cupid fairly often. Cherio pays him a visit and uses the ultimate, but does not find a kill. No blink expended by Cherry. Just Radiance, I was saying it during our set that we were on the desk, Biff, in the last one. Feels like, to me, Radiance is just, they lost their identity a little bit. They haven't been able to regain you know, they haven't figured out what they're supposed to be doing as a team quite yet. Not in terms of winning Smite, but what they want their brand to be as a competitive team right now.
Yeah, I understand. Like, SSG is this kind of like ubiquitous team that's kind of working at all facets, but then you have teams like Ghost, who are these more early game centric teams, and then you have Sanguine, who slanted their team fight to the late game. It seems like Radiance doesn't really have an idea of where they want to go with these drafts, but that will happen to you when you're forced into these longer breaks. They have to take a couple-week break, coming into the set. Maybe it struggles with the loot.
Dardez in trouble, but he's Afro. What am I saying? In trouble? He's fine. No. Again, Aurora is the one who's going to die. Just deja vu after deja vu. Dardez just baits and baits and baits. And then Aurora's the one who ends up falling once again, this time to his own hands. So Cherio, Dardez, and Raffer surge forward in the 4v3, right on time for Radiance's red buff to be spawning. Dardez again takes some damage, is the focus, but Cyclone Spin is the one who's going to have to dash out. Cherry follows him, perfect slice and dice, and cuts him down easily for Spacestation's 4th kill. Red buff invade notwithstanding. Nika bursts down big man Tings. Beads wouldn't have helped him either way. Adapting has to use his ultimate defensively, and all of that is going to wrap up in a Gold Fury for SSG. This is why you ban Afro. Full stop. It feels unbeatable at times.
This is why you ban Afro against Dardez in particular. There's a
Yes.
reason he hasn't been allowed to play this god for the longest. But can we talk about Nika as well? That rotation path through the top right to find the solo kill under the tier 2 tower, not only to find the kill, but also to create the space and force Radiance to acknowledge his presence, which creates the space for Space Station to move into the Gold Fury. Space Station is looking so good right now. SSG knows exactly what they're doing. They're playing the map incredibly well. And again, I said it earlier, it seems like they got away with a blind pick because every single one of these picks I would consider SSG specials. Nika on the Ama, Dardez on this Aphrodite, Raffer on Ganesh. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders, and it seems like Radiance can't quite keep up.
Agreed. This draft just feels so strong for Space Station, and if you're Radiance, not only are you in the middle of a bit of a slump, but then you give up this draft to Space Station, who looks like they're top 2. It just doesn't seem like a good spot to be in. I want to take note, as Cherry finishes off his Pyromancer, of the great ward vision by Space Station. They had that at the beginning of the last fight, and I have no idea how, Myth, because it felt like Space Station was on the back foot, you know, counter-punching to Radiance really setting the tone, but they found a way to get deep wards in their jungle that whole time, so that's how they knew Red was coming up and where everyone on Radiance was. And now that they have a little bit of a lead, a little bit of daylight, they've littered the Radiance jungle with wards. Adapting can't go anywhere, including to his own Red. Cherry going to drop the ultimate after Raffer had already done the same. Cherry not going to expend the beads in order to keep that chase going. Good peel from Aurora, because he doesn't need to, because Nika's going to come off the top rope and finish him off. 3 in a row now for the Amaterasu, and Space Station is rolling.
Yeah, 14 minutes in, I think Nika has made the fair point that you have to acknowledge if you're on Radiance that your tier 2 mid tower is not safe, not even your tier 1 Aurora in a little bit of trouble.
No fun when the Aphrodite gets to loop on you 14 minutes into the game. Like, Dardez was the initiator going between tier 1 and tier 2 towers. Benji joins the fray awfully late. Tier 1 has already fallen. 3K in the lead for Space Station. Experience looking a little bit better than I think it would be in most instances in this spot. About 3,000 all the same. But Space Station just have all the momentum in the world. Nika should be fine from this position as he's a level 15 Amaterasu. Did cost him a sprint though.
Look at Cyclone though on the left side, surrounded by 3. And he's going to lose his life to Cherio with an easy gank. Benji also in a little bit of trouble getting dove under this right side tower. Vote, this isn't your lane, bud. You're on the wrong side of the map, but it's going to work out nonetheless. And with this slow rotation path from Radiance, it seems like they're just going to be able to take away this tower for free. Space Station has largely been left uncontested after that 8-minute mark to do whatever it is they want on the map. And this gold lead, the XP lead, both starting to balloon. And a lot of it is going to be worse before it gets better. Space Station's engaged once these 5-on-5s start to up is going to be ridiculous. Nika coming in with a dazzling offensive, likely attached to an Aphrodite. Back off damage on the tail end to help out with the slow as well for the chase down. It's looking nigh unbeatable.
If there's any silver lining for Radiance, they have anti-heal now. Brawlers has been completed for a little bit for adapting, but Tings now has that Divine Ruin. It hasn't seemed to deter Dardes as he looks for the Kiss initiation. Doesn't end up getting it, but Space Station still managed to strip away that red buff. Tell Raffer really wants it, but decides to play it safe. And
No.
Okay, no. Yeah, let's break the link in order to make sure that we can get that red. Finally realize that's not the right call as Dardes can't help. Cut off by Aurora and Big Man. It just feels like Radiance it put themselves a little bit too downhill from this Space Station draft. But now that they have anti-heal, now that Benji has a slight level lead, Nika's rotations being punished at least a little bit, can you even force Space Station to group? If you're Radiance, I don't know if you want to take these little scrappy fights, try and find some picks, or try and group up and use your strength then, because I just don't know that you can fight anywhere near this Afro.
Yeah, I think I'm looking for anything besides a 5-on-5 engagement if I'm Radiance here. I mean, I don't want to make it out to be complete doom and gloom. It's only about 4,200 gold separating these two teams, but Radiance's way back in is finding these separated engagements for Space Station to either rotate into you and hope that you win the fight before they get there, or immediately disengage the second you see Dardes on the horizon because his healing is so oppressive at this point. If I'm Radiance, I'm sending Adapting to the long lane. I'm sending him to the short lane. I'm keeping my support in mid to just drag attention there and just hope that you're able to find some sort of scrappy ganks on the side lanes or even potentially find someone rotating on their own throughout the jungle. But Adapting being level 15, normally you would look for a jungler 1v1 situation with this Robin, but Nemesis is ahead with a Toxic Blade and an Icavale. I'm not 1v1ing him ever.
Only Fury down to half. Aurora gonna blink in, and Adapting finds nothing but air with that Mystic Rush. Aurora still committed as Cherio trying to 1v4 himself on the back line, gonna use his dashes to escape, and Aurora not given that same luxury. 4 deaths now for the Terra. Oni Fury secured by Space Station, as Vote still has that airstrike. A beautiful pull by Big Man Tings, and that could be what Radiance needed. They find Aurora, or find Raffer rather, but that might be about all she wrote for the rest of it. Cyclone down to Vote, Big Man Tings down to Nika, and Space Station Gaming not deterred by what Radiance is throwing their way.
But what is Radiance doing? Look at them moving throughout the enemy jungle, adapting, trying to see if he can spot out a red buff, but Space Station completely fine with it. They're going to head over to the Fire Giant or potentially the Pyromancer, whichever one they decide to. They've got so much sustain still available to them. Dardes is a little bit low on mana, so all Benji has to do is put up some pressure here and get them off just once to buy some time.
Try and take the 1v1 against Cherry, but we all know that 1v1 isn't going to stay that way for long. Slowed by the back off, and Vote able to cash in his third with ease. And Space Station, the only real determining factor here, or deterring I should say, is the fact that Dardes is low on mana, has that Mage's Blessing and Chronos Pen and MP5, so he's getting a good amount, but gonna chew away at that mana pool pretty quickly. Cherio trying to chop down the tree that is Aurora, as Nika and Vote are just happy to go for the Fire Giant. Adapting, silence, nowhere for him to go. Mystic Rush is up, but Adapting goes down despite it. 12 now for Space Station, as they get to hang around and pick up a Pyro on their way out. Still no reset coming. They must have a ton of gold in hand, but with the 5v3, might as well cash it in and go for some extra towers.
And toss that blue buff onto your Aphrodite. That mana sustain going to be even bigger, and it's going to help out your team. Just the passive from the Kiss is going to allow Nika to restore a little bit of his mana as they move on. But they're going for the Phoenix right now. That's fast.
Might as well. Vote, no one in front of him. Nothing but him and the Phoenix for now. Benji going to try and harass Dardes down, at least get a little bit of cooldown out of him, and that is the Undying Love forced by the solo laner. Right side Phoenix took very little damage throughout all of that, and Space Station walk back. I'm tempted to say empty-handed before I realize that they got, what, 4 kills, an Oni Fury, a tier 2 tower in right and mid, a Pyromancer, and a Fire Giant during all of that. Their pockets are quite full.
Yeah, 10,000 gold, 10,000 experience, 20 minutes on the clock. Space Station absolutely in the driver's seat moving forward. And their siege potential is strong, but it's not the traditional type of strength. It's not the ability to create no-play zones. It's not just this one ultimate that's going to be able to crush your back line. It's going to be a war of attrition from Space Station. They're going to have the HP 5 coming through from Fire Giant, as well as the MP 5, the healing from Dardes out of mid. Space Station, all they have to do if they want to work their way into the Phoenix is move up, force a couple of ultimates from Radiance, immediately disengage. If Aurora comes in with his ult, turn around, walk away, re-engage again once you've healed up with this Dardes Aphrodite, and then try again. Slowly whittle through the resources that Radiance have, and Radiance certainly have them, but they don't have the resources, I think at least, to win out on the initial engagement with a deficit that they're in.
Raffer already used the Dharmic Pillars in mid, so he's not going to have that for a little bit. Plenty of CDR for him, 30%, so not the end of the world. Also, worth noting that Dardes picked up a power pot and has already popped it. So he's looking to end the game right now. No more waiting around. 500 gold invested in this siege is the right way to think about it. Cherio splits off, tries to take the 1v1 up against Benji in mid, and I'm not liking how Benji's health bar is already looking, down to about a 2/3 HP. Is Cherry going to get some chip damage on that Phoenix? Seems like chip damage is the name of the game here for Radiance. Try and get some going. But where did adapting just go? Back off, my guy, says Dardes, and immediately adapting in the dirt. Left side Phoenix, a foregone conclusion now for Space Station Gaming as Cherio chases down and cuts down Cyclone Spin. Cyclone has not been allowed to really play the game here in game number 1. As Space Station now just dotting their I's and crossing their T's. 22 minutes of pure domination from your top seed in the SPL.
Look, I used the word clinical earlier when I was talking about a set today. I didn't know what clinical was until literally just this second. SSG was leisurely. They walked into the operation room, pulled on the gloves, cleaned up their hands, masked up. Coach, hand me the controller. I'm going to go in. And it's just free. It's just free across the board. Radiance looked like they were able to compete for the first 5 or so minutes as they worked their way into some blue buff invades or back camp invades. None of them work out. And from there, SSG had free reign.
Mifflin, it's just important for me to know that you wash your hands and then put the gloves on. Don't wash the gloves, man. It's not really worth the time. Write that one down. Maybe go practice as we get ready for game number 2 because Radiance have got to go back to the drawing board.
welcome back to the SPL. And every once in a while, Gore, we have ourselves a good old-fashioned beatdown. And it felt like that's what we had happen here in game number 1. SSG in control, it felt like, from minute 7 or so until 22:35, which is when it ticked over into done. Where did you see this one get out of control?
Picks and bans? I don't know. Maybe that's too BM to say. It feels like Radiance just started to fall behind when they started locking in the draft. Again, there's so much of this that I'm just not sold on. I think the Cupid makes sense. It's something they've picked several times. 1 and 4, it may be just a bad game for Cyclone. Big Man and adapting, I think, there on their picks, as well as Benji. It's really just the Terra that's throwing me for a loop, although you definitely get to see where some of the lapse is. I'm going to call him out. 3,000 damage, half the amount of the support, less than the Ganesh on the other side. Adapting didn't really have any hand on any wheel for this game for Radiance. I feel like Space Station, you know, they did a little joke about it at the beginning of the cast, but they get 5 picks that they really want going into this game and then perform well on them. Of course they're going to. They're absolutely happy. This is a draft they would dream about in most circumstances. And being able to come through, you get Nika having a phenomenal game there on the Amaterasu. Raffer has a lot of impact there on the Ganesh. And Darda's Aphrodite, which should tell you all you need to know about how this game is going to go in terms of healing. And it just felt like they were never really falling out of control. Once SSG got that lead, like you said, 7 minutes in, a little slower for them, but they had to make up for maybe a slow early game. Once they got there, it never stopped. I mean, there was nothing it felt like Radiance could do to fight back.
No, they were struggling, and I agree with your identification of picks and bans as a problem. Normally, that Afro permaband away from Dardes, giving up the Amaterasu, and all that pressure for Nika in solo seemed a bit odd to me there as well. Radiance clearly coming in, I don't know if dragging their feet's right. That makes it sound like they are not trying. I think that this team is trying hard, but clearly they've lagged behind a little bit after missing that time. And they're going to need a chance to right the ship to get back on track because this is not the Radiance we're used to seeing. Let's go into game number 2's picks and bans. Radiance back in that first pick spot. And maybe this can help a little bit. We were discussing, hey, how's everybody doing in the background there, Corey? We were discussing why being first might affect some of, you know, Radiance's win rate to the level that it did. And I wonder if having those 3 picks, while SSG only have 2, is a big deal for them to be able to then come in and ban some stuff away. What do you see here? What do you hope to see for Radiance to make some changes after game 1?
Well, they've already done one of the top things on my list, which is get rid of that Aphrodite. I guess on this side of the screen, it's over there. Ban out Aphrodite. I want to see Amaterasu either down there or up there. One of the two, right? Like, she's got to be picked before Nika can get it. And then I'm going to be a little happier because that takes away 2 of the strong powerhouses. The other downside is, though, that you're playing this weird game where, again, SSG don't necessarily need the meta picks in order to pop off. You know, Vote doesn't need the ROM, doesn't need the Cupid to have a great game. He can go for something a little deeper. Honestly, they'd like to even pull out some mage ADCs still if they feel like it would deem them. I wouldn't be surprised if they had an Uller sitting in their back pocket. I like the fact that SSG, right now it just feels like they have such a wide variance and a wide stance and all of the gods that they have.
Yeah.
They'll go to the same picks if you keep letting them have it, but for the most part it's hard to ban them out. But again, this feels like the right call. You get 2 that are targeted at Dardes. I wouldn't mind the Amaterasu getting thrown down there just because of the fact that it had a big impact. But you're controlling some factors here.
Well, this should put them in a better spot already. It feels as though they're coming down and saying, all right, we'll throw some bans toward Dardes. They take care of the Aphrodite. They take care of the Hera. SSG themselves ban away the Amaterasu. So that leaves Wukong as the best solo laner out there. Cupid and Rom still available as those top-tier hunters, and even still some great supports out there to pick 2. The Hercules goes unpicked, unbanned this time as well. But it looks like Radiance elect to take the ROM first overall, and Cyclone Spins looked great on this pick. He's been using those snipes differently than everybody else, willing to use them very early in the engagements, not so much just for finishing off kills, but for setting up kills. And they take it away from SSG, who have been comfortable in the Cupid, but they've got the ROM on their side. Maybe this is a better start for Radiance this time around.
I do like it. Again, we got to see it have a pretty big impact in one of the games up against the Knights. Not big enough that it changed the whole course of everything and corrected the ship entirely on its own, but enough that, like you said, Cyclone Spin's had a consistent enough performance. You can constantly bet on this as being something he's going to be good with. But again, What are you giving up in order to lock this in? I think Cupid still available is going to be beneficial for you, although again, maybe not the biggest pick for SSG. I don't know if they'll shy away from it later on if they still have the option. But you get Sobek, which has been very kind to them. You get Erlang Shen, which has been more than kind to them to go into the jungle, and maybe even flex it over to Nika if they really want to, although I think Cherio would fight him for the opportunity. I think this is so far, again, just feeling like SSG have their hand on what they want, and they know how they're going to come into this game to be victorious.
I wonder if Radiance are going to take this Hercules, though, Gore, even with SSG confidently taking 2 of their best picks here at this point. No, it'll be the Ganesh. Now, this is very interesting. The Sobek is still a bit of a flex pick over there for SSG. I suppose it could go to Nika or over to Raffer in the support role, but I don't know. This Ganesh doesn't really function to me as a counter pick. This is purely just something that Radiance think is strong, and stepping away from the Hercules as well. That was available to take, but it looks like they didn't love it, maybe especially in a world where they knew SSG were going to be taking a Cupid deal like the Ganesh on the side here for Radiance this time around.
I always like Ganesh, but I don't think he's going to have anywhere near as easy a lane as Raffer had. You know, we had mentioned it, going up against something like the Terra just made things so much easier, where it was just like, oh, cool, you're going to try to channel this ability or try to combo this ability. You throw up your pillar and dash into it? Well, good luck getting the dash off. Good luck getting there to be able to control that. I still think Ganesh is going to be insanely strong, and he does have the ability, if he's up against like the Sobek, to catch him out on the pluck to make sure that that doesn't go through, or to stall him out once he's in danger so that he has trouble getting out, escaping, healing, whatever, with that sickle strike. So there's a lot of options for this Ganesh to still find a lot of control, but with the ROM, I think they're going to have the pressure they need. They're going to be able to sustain over there in dual lane. I'm still more worried about adapting, though, right now, because he's the one who really does need to change things up. Outside of what we've seen from Aurora, the Ganesh is a step in the right direction. Where does the jungle go?
Ooh, I wonder if this could be a Tsukiyomi game. I said we might see it earlier, but it did not come through. But look at some of adapting staples getting taken away from him. The Daji and the Unbots, both banned here by Spacestation. Now, Radiance have the option of where they'd like to go. They know that SSG still need to pick for Dardes. I think that's why we see that Chang'e getting banned. And then also very likely something for Nika, so they take that Achilles away from him too. Now that does still leave the King Arthur out there for Nika if he wants to. All right, so I'm not so bad at this mix and bands thing. It's exactly what it is. But what about Radiance? I don't know. It could even be Thor for adapting. He's got a lot to pick from.
Yeah, it's widely open. Although Thor, I think it was notable, and I have to go back just to look it up to make sure I'm not completely making a fool of myself, but he hasn't been as successful as you'd like to see. Picked a ton. I think he's at a 50% win rate for everybody in Phase 2, but for a lot of these teams, specifically last week, he did not do too hot, so we'll have to see if it comes through. But Mercury, Finch, this is, I think, more than anything an adapting special. I actually really like this pickup for them because of the late game hyper carry potential it has. It feels like something that only adapting really would run. And in the right hands, especially with how we saw this Raw perform earlier, again, even though it lost, Big Man Tings had a good game, I actually really like what Radiance are bringing in here. This is a solid draft for them.
I think so, too. They've got great control with this Ganesh. Even Mercury provides some of that with the Sonic Boom, the survivability with Wukong and Ra, and the pick potential that Ra can provide for them paired with that ROM as well. I hope they have fun on the cast with Ra ROM and trying to bounce between those two. Poseidon comes in as the last pick here for SSG. And Darda's going a bit of a different route. We don't see him that often on these more traditional old-school mages like a Poseidon, but I think this can work here. They have so much control and setup that they should be able to hit the Kraken pretty reliably.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult at this point with a pin to lock people down, Sobek to pluck people up, and that's not including when Cupid and then King Arthur come over to help set up kills as well.
Yeah.
It should be roughly consistent in a lot of those early 3v3 fights. Very solid, again, when it comes to some of the late fights. In fact, one of the only mages, I think, when you put them up there, that can contend with Ra for the ability to confirm objectives right now. Kraken being very good at it, Searing Pain very good at it. Ra has the distance advantage in that one, but overall, I think that this Poseidon, it's going to be an interesting look, and we've already seen Twig run it today and look pretty good with it, so maybe there's something to it that's coming in for these top teams to want to lock it in.
His Whirlpool, though, gonna be a problem for Radiance trying to deal with that cripple field. Can SSG get the 2-0, or are Radiance gonna right the ship? Let's find out in Game 2.
Thanks, Finch and Gore. Still Aggro and Mifflin here with you as Radiance. Switch it up a little bit here, Miff. They were talking a lot about this Mercury on the desk. I love it, personally, for adapting. It's one of his most successful gods he has, and that's saying a lot considering he's got the best resume in all of Smite Pro history. I think that this is the sort of jolt to the system that Radiance could need.
I think it could definitely work out. Anything that's going to be a drastic switch from game one, I think is going to be welcomed here wholeheartedly. The biggest note for me for Radiance is that we're finally getting to see Aurora off of this Terra pick and onto something that can maybe fit that aggressive role in the early game slightly better. Sure, you could say that Nash still not one of those best in the early. He really doesn't even hit his stride until he gets that ultimate available, but not only does it act as a ban-away pick for SSG, but I think it is just a straight-up improvement over that Terra, so I'm expecting great things there. My main concern for Radiance in this game in particular is how well are they able to execute on this 3v3 in mid. You have the CC lockdown to make sure that BMT finds value out of the Searing Pain, but the re-engage potential or even the disruption potential that Space Station's 3-on-3 brings is going to be hugely impactful. If Adapting ever commits his dash to go in, the lockdown from Cherio and the early trades between an Erlang Shen and a Mercury are always going to favor the Erlang Shen. Dardes with the cripple, even Raffer with the tail whip to make sure that things aren't going perfectly. It's going to take a high level of execution from Radiance.
Lots of CC available for Space Station Gaming, and some of that includes this pluck that Aurora is now on the receiving end of. That chases out the shell, and that's all she wrote on this side of the map, at least for now. Can't imagine we'll see a whole lot of early Mercury ganks. Not exactly the most potent dual lane ganker early on, though Special Delivery, a very good setup tool, and I think you're right to mention it in conjunction with Big Man Tings on the Ra. That is some of the easiest setup in the whole game for the old Ra 1-4 combo. You toss someone directly at him, that's an easy way to get it done. Definitely a favorite combo of mine, so I like seeing it here for Radiance. I'm just a little bit worried that if Adapting falls behind again in this game, that the comeback potential is going to be difficult, but I do think that we probably should be seeing more Mercury than we are right now in the meta. He's good against a lot of these picks. No beads anymore for Adapting. Dardes chased those out. I mean, slow immunity against things like Fields of Love, Lurking in the Waters, Whirlpool. I mean, it seems like we should be seeing more Merc, Miff.
I think Merc is good. I agree with that wholeheartedly, but with auto attack assassins kind of being in the meta right now, Merc is going to be very reliant on crit to be able to match what Erlang Shen is doing with the stim, or even what a Nemesis can do with her shield, just blocking out a couple of those auto attacks. I think maybe they're worried about that 1v1 assassin meta that you start to see once they have those fire giant dances where assassins like to kind of skirmish in the middle of the map. I'm not sure that you can completely trust a Mercury to win out on those. And as far as global ultimates go, I think he's still slightly outshined by the likes of Thor or a Ratatasker, the engage potential. I think the main barrier to entry for Mercury is likely the fact that he takes so long to come online. He's even a little bit slower, I would argue, than something along the lines of a Nemesis who's going to come online the second she gets that second or third item available to them. I think Mercury requires a lot of setup, but we have seen him a little bit in the SPL. Panatom, one of the premier Mercuries right now, has been having huge strides on this pick, and he loves to use that Sonic Boom down the long lane and really camp it out there. And into a Cupid and a Sobek, that might just be the strategy for Adapting.
Hits 5 here. Wouldn't be surprised to see him rotate left. He does hit 5, but does not rotate left. You see the cup is almost full, Mifflin, and that's the jungler's job. No, he's going to gank mid. Dardes uses the beads, and Big Man Tings takes him off the map. A beautiful shot with that Searing Pain as Dardes turned around, eyes ablaze, looking to Kraken. Adapting right there. Remember, no beads for him, so Cherry was on top of it with that taunt, but a perfect ult for a big man prevents that. First blood goes Radiance's way.
Well played, instantly executed the Mercury ultimate immediately into the Searing Pain. Talk about good setup, that was nearly unreactable. Dardes does drop the beads, but it wasn't enough.
Prots shredded, quote, alive. Cyclone, 2 out of 3 just ain't good enough in order to get the second kill. But that's what I want to see out of Radiance Myth. They're being proactive, and not to say they weren't in game number 1, because they were. They were consistently trying to get blue buffs there for Benji and make sure they were invading on Nika, but it just wasn't working out, and it didn't seem like they had a plan B. Radiance in 2 separate lanes and just 2v2s make 2 plays. Only one ends up netting them a kill, but still like the way they're playing it.
I mean, a lot of this also comes down to the draft. There was no plan B for Radiance in Game 1 because what are you going to do? Send your jungler to duo where there's a Jingwei, or send him to mid where there's an Aphrodite who's ahead? I think that Radiance made a lot of their efforts shown in the drafting phase of Game 2. I think that's really where we're starting to see the biggest difference because they were playing proactively, as you pointed out, but now they're getting a little bit of success there, and even had they not had success, they can at least fall back to trying to gank out solo lane or trying to work their way through mid and not have to worry about that level of sustain. But interesting pathing from Raffer.
Use this direction to go and get a ward in lane. Might cost him his life, and it will. Easy second kill there for Radiance off the setup from Aurora and adapting, but Raffer was there to try and put a ward in between the towers to spot out this Mercury gank. No such ward for Benji. He's going to have to use his ultimate, but not too much of a problem. He's out of there pretty easily. No ultimate expended there by Cherio, just the blink.
Hey, luckily for Raffer, he does get that ward down, and it might come in value here because Adapting didn't have to commit his ultimate to finding that kill. But for now, it seems like Adapting realizes it. You dropped a ward over there, let me work on the right side of the map, or the center, as Dardes tries to work his way back into mid. This is a much better look from Radiance here, but despite being 2-0, despite having first blood in their favor, they still haven't really established a gold lead, just 300 separating these two teams, and XP largely equalized.
Only so much farm on the map early. I mean, 6 minutes in, I think it is kind of difficult to get a tangible gold lead, but certainly more than 400. That's the first blood bounty. So without it, it would be in Space Station's favor, which is, I think, the point you're making. And it certainly is a good one because Radiance still the ones that have the onus on them. They're the ones that have to make a play here in game number 2 after the dominating Space Station Gaming victory. And we talked a little bit about identities for teams in game number 1. Space Station's identity is pretty solid. Most of the time, they're going to play early games slowly, wait for their opportunity. They're the ultimate bend but not break team, and they crack back faster than any team in the whole league by my estimation. They will go from 0 to 60 in an instant. Maybe not this early. Nika just trying to create some space. Got the beads from adapting, and Dardes lurking around. Here comes Cherio as well. Remember, no blink for him, but Pin is there over the wall. No Kraken coming from Dardes. Instead, it's trying to secure the blue, but Big Man Tings will do that with that snipe. Easy for him. No ultimate for Benji, as what I think Space Station was counting on. Unluckily for them, it comes up right on time, and Benji will stay safe, pick up the blue, and head back to lane.
These are slow, hesitant, testing engagements from both teams. Neither one there really looked like they were fully committed to that fight. They just wanted to see what they can get away with. Radiance does luckily secure that blue buff through BMT's ultimate. From there, Space Station really has no reason to stick around after Benji's ultimate comes through. There's no chase down potential. The positioning was there. Adapting had the ultimate charge, so it was the right call to go ahead and disengage themselves. But already we're starting to see that despite an early lead for Radiance, first blood and second going their way, Space Station are still the ones trying to get proactive, looking for these invades, looking for anything that they can throughout the jungle. And it's created a lot of time and space for them. Radiance, as 4 members, are forced to rotate into the solo lane and kind of meander about as Space Station just looks for things that they might be able to take. No one spends any of that time farming except for the duo lane, and so far, completely even.
We got a chance to, well, I got a chance to bring it up last game. You didn't get a chance to expand upon it because that's when Space Station really put the pedal to the metal in game number 1. But another game without a single teleport in that solo lane. Blink once again for Benji. This time it's beads for Nika. Why do you think we've seen these solo laners go away from the usual staple?
I think, especially in recent weeks, we've been starting to see junglers really working their way into that solo lane a little bit more often, so a defensive relic can go a pretty far away, or we see that the solo laners have been rotating out a little bit earlier on, which is where this blink is going to come into play. But adapting whiffs the ultimate. Cherio with a swift backstep is able to get himself out of there. Should be a clean disengage from Radiance as long as they don't get caught out.
They get caught out though, but oh my goodness, where did Dardes just go? Big man Tings puts him in the dirt, and Radiance finds at least one more. Now they will lose adapting because of the blink pluck coming from Raffer, but what a turnaround. The clean Lassus combo coming from BMT gets him yet another one. Cherio chasing a little bit too deep. Somersault Cloud actually ends up getting body blocked a little bit by Raffer, and Raff able to dodge out some of the damage, but not enough. Benji with yet another one for Radiance. Radiance seem a little bit more awake here, Mifflin, and maybe no more so than Big Man Tings. What a snipe from him.
Yeah, Big Man Ting's nearly infallible on this raw pick. We saw it earlier this week. This man doesn't know how to miss. Miss is not in the vocabulary for this guy. But I want to highlight Raffer's play right there. He knows moving in trades out his life every single day of the week, but he's willing to do it because he got Cherio out of a sticky situation. Had he not moved up with the tail whip, Benji would have instantly landed with the Somersault Cloud and likely finished off that kill, or been able to chase down and find the Jinku Bang on the tail end. So Raffer makes a very quick decision, decides, okay, my jungler more valuable than me, I'm playing support, me die, big good, and it works out perfectly for him. But again, Radiance was on the receiving end of aggression from Space Station there, but they were able to turn around that fight, now 2 for 1 in their favor. Now they use their auto attackers to burn through Gold Fury.
No problem whatsoever. Radiance grabs the Gold Fury, using that additional power coming from the raw heal makes it quick work of this objective, and you were asking for a lead, and you shall receive. Radiance up about 2,000 gold, over 3,000 experience in the lead now, and particularly this mid lane looks fantastic for them. Nika getting use out of those purification beads that he's picked up, but he might need more than that because adapting is lurking. Sonic Boom ready, charged up, but it goes wide right. Dardes is cracking, hits dead center, and that's going to take down at least one, but Dardes will go down in trade. Steps up a little bit too far. Aurora ends up living. That's going to do it for this right-hand side fight. Now in the mid lane, it looks like Cyclone got picked on the rotation over. Cherio ended up laying the trap and maybe found a 1v1 in that mid lane. Overall, it's 2 for 1 in favor of SSG. Now Cherio might be in an awkward position, playing a little bit of chicken with his 72 transformations, adapting, trying to wait it out, but with help coming from Raffer, could be easy, and adapting's dash is down, and so is he. That's what Erlong Shen does better than most. Locks you down and chews you up.
Never count out an Erlang Shen in a trade, but so far, I would say that Adapting's doing a very good job of setting pace here. He's able to keep up with this more early game slanted god inside of Erlang. He goes for the Rage very early on in his build. He's already got 2 stacks on it as well. Getting a little bit of a replay here, catching out that pick that we get Cherio onto Cyclone Spin. Clean play, just catches him with his roll down, trying to rotate back into mid. But Adapting's doing just fine. It looks like he's going to move immediately into a Deathbringer as well. He's scaling pretty strongly into the mid to late game. I think that this is a pace that you can be completely happy with from this Mercury. You don't really expect him to be able to keep up with an Erlang Shen like this. But now that the level deficit's starting to grow a little bit more, now about 1.5 in favor of Cherio, if SSG are able to group up and start taking these team fights as 5, I think that's where we're really going to start to see Radiant struggle. And Adapting has certainly been struggling to find these ultimates.
Hasn't hurt them too much so far because Big Man Tings has been absolutely locked in. I mean, he could hit a fly from orbit right now, it feels like. No setup necessary. Nika tries to find Adapting, but a good dash gets him out of that Excalibur's Wrath. There's a blink from Benji to get past the Whirlpool. So a couple movement abilities used, and Radiance not looking too much worse for wear. I say that until I see Adapting's health bar down to half HP, and now he's without the Sonic Boom. What happened? Space Station was behind. They're still behind, Mifflin, but doesn't it feel like that play on the right side, the 2v1, or the 2 for 1 overall in favor of SSG, has really pulled the wind out of Radiance's sails?
I think it's just the relative strength of these picks from both teams in the early game. Erlang Shen, despite being slightly behind going into that fight, is going to be able to deal a little bit more damage than Adapting will, even though he does have 2 stacks on the Rage. King Arthur is going to be a much stronger fight pick than Sun Wukong at this phase of the game. Sun Wukong really thrives when he's able to get into the backline alone, almost as a solo agent, and just disrupt the mid lane mage, whereas King Arthur's a little bit more so towards that AoE. These fights are just favoring Space Station.
Cyclone Spin, now without a relic. Gonna use that ultimate as well. Cherio buys space for the tier 1 tower to go down. Vote's ultimate will confirm the 5th kill for SSG. Aurora gonna walk in, Kraken way off there from Dardes, but it's still gonna get some damage onto the backliners. Of course, I gas up Big Man Tings' ultimate, and then he splits the uprights. But that was a zoning ult, you see. That's exactly what he intended to hit from that position. As Benji rotates in late, loses the beads for his trouble. Space Station get a pick on this left-hand side, and look at the relic situation for Radiance. There is 1 relic. There's 10 possible that could be up. They have 1 available.
And you don't think Space Station know that? They could immediately move in towards the Pyromancer because they've been afforded a little bit of extra time. 40 seconds left on this Primal Fury respawn means that there's no objective for Radiance to split off for themselves. They're going to have to take this fight if they want to defend it. No relics, probably not a fight you want to be able to take. So now Space Station pull themselves not only a pick, but an objective. That gold lead that Radiance was able to establish themselves not only cut to 0, but now swung in the opposite direction, nearly 2,000 gold, favoring Space Station, just in time for them to back up, return to base, spend up that gold, and then reposition themselves around this Gold Fury.
Adapting despite the good start for him on this Mercury is now down 2.5 full levels on this Mercury. Really far behind Cherio, who's now 4-0 in total on this Erlong Shen. Really feels like that play where Adapting came in and tried to stop Cherry from getting that tier 1 tower and ended up dying for it is what swung this game back in Space Station Gaming's favor. Just all comes down to 1 or 2 missed abilities sometimes. I don't know that he kills Cherio in that spot because Raffer was coming for help, but ever since, it just feels like Radiance is not doing what they need to do, including right there, Adapting comes up empty-handed. Well, that's not exactly true. He got a handful of wall courtesy of that ultimate, but not exactly the enemy mid laner that he was looking for.
And Dardes certainly spots it out, so now Space Station know that they're going to have a slight advantage if they do want to look for that team fight. But instead, it seems like both teams are willing to just reset, go back to farming. Space Station does have a lead, but not one so sizable that they can feel confident taking a 5-on-5 engagement while also tackling the Gold Fury itself. I don't think Radiance is going to step up themselves either, so it should be a moot point until one team can find a little bit more of a foothold, maybe a pick through mid or something along those lines. But Space Station should definitely be looking to try and exploit this time while the Sonic Boom is going to be down. Be it through an invade, be it through grouping around gold, or even trying to pressure down one of these towers and force Radiance to group up as 5. But Space Station finished their lap around the base, a couple people back, spent up their gold, cleared out some camps, and now they're reassuming the position around the Primal.
Raffer looking for a blink pluck. You can tell that's what he's looking for right around this wall. Good ward coverage coming from Space Station, but Space Station don't have the luxury of just pulling the objective and securing it with Kraken 100%. Searing Pain will throw Radiance's hat into the ring, whether Space Station like it or not, if Radiance's mid laner is given the opportunity. You're going to tank it up, and Radiance going to surge forward a little bit. Pluck lands on a Cyclone Spin, but Raffer is going to pay for it. Big Man gets him with ease. 2-man Sonic Boom rips through the middle, as now it's Dardes who's going to fall to the snipe from Benji and Cyclone Spin together. But Nika and Cherry on the back line looking to return some damage. Make that just Nika's. Cherio realizes he can't withstand this onslaught. And a great fight from Radiance. They're going to clean house on Space Station Gaming.
Man, Raffer going for that pluck, it makes sense. He wants to break the stalemate, but with Radiance grouped up perfectly as 5, it had been so long since the last team fight, you know those relics are going to be available. He's trading out his life there every single day of the week, unless he connects with someone who just doesn't have beads, which would have been a tank, and you really don't want to look that way. So now Radiance immediately off of the beads. Now you have a Raffer surrounded by 5 members of your team. Shut him down, and then look for the engage on the tail end.
Cherry lurking, and Radiance find him. Snipe not up quite yet from Big Man Tings, but it's getting close. Trying to weave through that silence. Don't let him do it to you, boys. Cherry's looking for the steal, but Radiance are going to secure it. Boy, was that a close one. Radiance walk away with 5 members having the FG buff.
And they've got a lot of passive gold still on the map. 5 members with FG, Primal Fury still available. 5 towers still up on the map. Just passive gold waiting to be collected. Space Station, with their draft, can still look for a defense here or even try and strip away this Primal. as Radiance goes back to base. But on these sieges, on these defenses, Space Station still has tools. They're still got a gold lead in their favor, however small that it is, so they have fight potential. I think you should give up the tier 1 towers, but around these tier 2s, you can have a Raffer look for another one of these plucks. You know that the actives are going to be down for at least another minute on the side of Radiance, so it should get you a little bit more value this time around. Vote obviously has the no-play zone, the Fields of Love that he can drop once Radiance decides to fully engage themselves. Dardas still has one-shot potential as well with the Divine Ruin, the Soul Reaver, and the Doom Orb. These are very high-power items. There are ways the Space Station can look for the defense, and Radiance's Siege is a little bit easier to shut down when you have so many targets that are melee focused, with Adapting having to commit his entire body to every single bit of poke. If he wants to touch the tower, he's going to have to step up. There are ways for them to fight in here.
Space Station's going to try and fight in on this side. We'll say that Dardaz's Krakens, I don't think he's found a good one since that double on the right-hand side. That was some time ago. I think they're going to need a little bit more from their mid laner this time around if Space Station want to defend effectively. They will not die on the hill of the tier 2 tower. Makes sense to me. That tier 2 only puts Radiance up about 1,000 gold, 1,200 or so in the lead. One tier 2 down. Now do you defend the next one? Or the one after that? Space Station trying to decide where to draw their line in the sand.
They don't have to hard stick in their heels at any point, but if they're able to slow down the push even a little bit, that's less time that Radiance could be on the Phoenix.
Aurora's already dropped that Dharmic Pillars, and he's in a bit of trouble. Good stun from Benji prevents Raffer from getting involved in this fight, and puts good poke onto the level 13 Sobek. He's looking a little bit worse for wear, as now Radiance tries to backdoor this tier 2. Snipe, not on the mark this time for big man Tings, and Aurora is in a bit of trouble. Kraken right after the taunt, and that's going to knock down the Elephant with ease. Space Station Gaming now emboldened to push forward. Double blinks coming in from their frontliners. Beads used by Adapting, and Cyclone Spin didn't get the memo. Nika going to cut him down, and Benji goes in off the Somersault Cloud. He'll have enough damage to take down Dardaz, even though Dardaz had the relics up. Great Sonic Boom from Adapting is going to cut through the middle of it, but now it's Benji left in the back line, and Space Station Gaming claim another one. That means it's 3 for 1 in Radiance. The team with the FG buff is the one running for the hills.
And now they've got 10 seconds left on Aurora's respawn. Space Station could very easily take down the tier 2 tower, but whether or not they decide to move into the Phoenix is yet to be seen. It seems like that is the case. BMT's ultimate is available, Adapting's is not, and he lands it.
Right on top of Vote, the priority target who's going to do the majority of the Phoenix damage, but it's too little too late. Mid-Phoenix already dead and gone. Raffer down to just a sliver of HP, but I don't think they've got anything to close the gap. No blink there for Adapting. They'll give up the chase in mid, instead elect to maybe try and catch Cherio on this left-hand side. Cherry, sneaky little Erlong Shen, going to try and get the back off. He will. And Space Station Gaming walk away triumphant. Mid-Phoenix down, and Radiance, the team we thought was turning the corner in this game number 2, kind of left wondering what went wrong.
It seemed to me like Radiance was, again, just a little bit desynced on what they wanted to do. What was the decision-making there? We see Aurora step up to the tower line, drop the Dharmic Pillar, try and work his way in, and then some members of Radiance are trying to zone off Raffer on the side. No one's really inside the tower with Aurora, who gets immediately caught out as the majority of Radiance starts to back up themselves. And then from there, some step back forward when they think the fight's looking good. It just seems like they aren't having a definitive shot call that they can listen to on each one of these engagements. If Aurora wants to go in, he's going to need the backup of his team. If they all want to disengage, that should be the call. There can't be this wishy-washy flip-flopping in the middle of these team fights, because that's exactly what gets you caught out. If no one steps back forward, Cyclone Spin would have been much further back. Space Station wouldn't have been able to catch him out nearly as easily. Benji is able to get the return kill, but it trades out his life as well.
Good silence from Aurora. I don't think that pluck was going to land, but Aurora made sure it wouldn't, as Space Station the first ones to the dance floor on this Fire Giant. They'll get Pyromancer without any sort of contest, as Adapting and Big Man had to push out that mid lane fire wave. We said at the very beginning of this set, Miff, that as of late especially, it felt like Aurora was on a different page than Adapting and Benji. I think you highlighted it right. That just happened again underneath that tier 2 in the mid lane. Check out what Space Station's doing here. They're sending Cupid over to the left-hand side where the rest of Radiance are trying to regain ward control. They're going to let Vote solo down this Oni Fury, and that's going to set up an Oni Fire Wave in the mid lane. Something that will be difficult for Radiance to deal with. Even someone like Adapting, normally your jungler can handle these sorts of waves. Mercury, not exactly the best at clearing out fire waves, especially without a Golden Blade. Adapting's gone the crit build all the way through. I think this is going to be pretty difficult for Radiance to deal with. They recognize it and start grouping up, but Space Station's got bodies on Fire Giant. They can't just pull it.
And it's not just that Oni Fire Wave in mid, it's also just the normal Oni waves on the side of the map. That one in the long lane is going to be largely uncontested. We already see that Space Station have a stacked up wave over there, just working through these towers. It seems like, yeah, Radiance is spotting it out here. Someone's going to have to go back and defend it. And the second Space Station sees them on the map or they see an opportunity here, they're immediately going to pull the fires. Radiance have to make a hard decision. Do we send one member to defend this wave and then try and take the 4v5 on the Fire Giant, or do we just give it up?
FG pulled, Frenzy popped, Space Station looking to commit. Benji can be the first one in. He uses Somersault Cloud and could end up stealing it away, but Space Station secure it, courtesy of Dardez's Kraken, but Dardez low in the back line already. Adapting finally is able to punch him down, but not before losing his life in trade. Rocky style in the back line for SSG. Nika looking to chase down Big Man Ting's relics up for the Ron. He's gonna need him. Uses some from Aurora as well, but Nika with another flank alongside a Raffer, still going for this Rod. Plucked back, and that should be the end of Big Man Ting's vote notch number 10 for Space Station Gaming. Cyclone gonna pop the ultimate. This will secure his death almost certainly. Raffer gets credit, Cyclone goes down to Cherry, and that might just do it here, Mifflin. Mid Phoenix spawns, but it's a Bird and Benji against 4 members of SSG.
4 members of SSG who are largely healthy with Fire Giant as well. Benji is going to take a miracle.
Gonna try and do that miracle. No ultimate for him quite yet. Cherry, Raffer, Nika, the CC chain is good. And Space Station Gaming convert in a quick set against a Radiance team that is gasping for air right now. Another devastating loss for Radiance. Space Station Gaming take care of business.
Radiance does look a lot better in Game 2. There were points there where we really thought they were in control, that Fire Giant going their way. A couple of good sieges, they were able to get that tier 2, and then they move into mid. Just one misplay, one poor team fight immediately loses them the game. Unfortunate for them, it's been a rough stretch for the boys on Radiance.
Something's got to change, and it's not looking like their schedule's getting any easier. They see Ghost on Sunday. Yeesh. Let's throw it back to the desk after a quick break.
Welcome back to the SPL. We are just about done here today as Space Station take care of Radiance with 2 relatively convincing games. And Gore, it's now starting to look to me like Radiance are in a free fall, man. They are struggling to figure out where they can get their feet on solid ground. And SSG and Ghost, their current and next opponents, are not the places to try and get things sorted out.
Yeah, it feels like, you have SSG who kind of just knocked out their legs from underneath them, Ghosts who are about to slam their elbow down on them. At least that's what it feels like. After the way today went, and you go 0-4 on the day against the Knights in Space Station, it's one thing if you win one, lose one here. I think losing both is definitely going to hit them where it hurts, mentally at that point as well, because of how much went wrong. Seems like they just need to go back to the drawing board. It just felt disconnected. Some of the fights didn't seem to click all the way for Radiance. And then you go to the other side, and even though Dardes ended up being the primary target of the aggression Radiance decided to channel forward, everybody else, it felt like a well-oiled machine just moving forward. Again, 2-6 there for Dardes. Unfortunate, but if that means Vote goes 2-0-7 and Cherio goes 7-0, then you're making that trade every single day.
Yeah, you'll make it happily. A monster performance here from Cherio, getting Nika involved relatively early with some presence over there, bullying around the map too, coming over to find Cyclone Spin and making life hard on him. And as you mentioned, man, it felt like Radiance came in with an over-adjustment. All these bans they spent on Dardes, they focused him out of fights. They said, Dardes, you are not winning this set. And Spacey said, okay, well, the rest of us are pretty good too. What about Cherio steps up? And he absolutely did. An excellent performance in the Erlong Shen.
I mean, they invest so much in the mid, and yet, you have to look at the damage numbers. Adapting still, with all of that crit, only had a little bit more damage than Dardes, who spent most of his time in grayscale throughout that game. So I think they were able to handle it pretty well, to say the least, there for Space Station. Cherio, I don't even want to say picked up the slack as much as he just demolished them, and they slowed their demolition by making sure Dardes wasn't there alongside him.
Well, we have said Cherio's name enough times in a row that he has now appeared. Cherio is the one that we have the post-game interview with.
That's right, we got the jungler for Space Station, Cherio, joining us now. Cherry, I just want to say the 5 gods you guys played in Game 1 and make you understand again that this is the comp you got. Okay, ready? You guys got Amaterasu, Nemesis, Afro, Ganesh, Jing Wei. Did you ever expect going into this set to get a draft that good, especially to kick it off?
Not really. I remember Vote doing picks and bans before we played, and it was like Vote was like, "There's no way we're getting this god. There's no way we're getting this god. There's no way we're getting this god." And 2 of those gods were Afro and Amy, and I guess he was wrong. We're just kind of like joking about it when we picks and bans. Like, yeah, nice draft, Vote. You predicted it all. So yeah, like I think maybe they were like, well, maybe just like try the Afro, because obviously like people don't get that much practice against it because it's always banned and not many teams play. So maybe like if we get a practice against it, maybe this is the time. So maybe that's what happened. I'm not really sure why they left it open. I didn't feel like they had like I mean, I know what plan they had against it, but obviously it didn't work because like we kind of just snowballed the game, to be honest. So they didn't really get the team fight.
Yeah, I feel like your team identity right now is best summed up by a common phrase we have here that is bend but not break. You guys consistently will put yourself in positions to always be able to bounce back, and then when you hit the gas pedal, you guys end the game really, really quickly the vast majority of the time. Do you think that style comes from your teamwork and how long you guys have played together? I mean, 4 out of 5 of you moving back from last year's team. Why do you think you guys are so good at this particular style?
I think we just know when we're strong. I think like we play around our power spikes, and the way we draft doesn't really make us good early game, I would say, like the way we want to play the game. We want to just like Rafa rotates the mid, me and Daughters and Rafa make plays together with Nika or Road, depending where we're strong. I feel like this is where we start to shine, and because we don't draft too much early, sometimes it takes us like a while to start doing that. Like start like, okay, now this is the time to fight. So sometimes we lose before we get to that point. But I feel like when we get to that point where we're like, okay, this is where we win, I don't see us like losing team fights to other teams if we play the way we want to play. But obviously, every team will say that. Sometimes doesn't work out for everyone. But yeah, like when we are willing, like I'm personally, I think in the team, we're very willing to fall behind early, start losing, be 5K behind, going to 20 minutes, and still win the game. Like I don't see anything wrong with that.
Being 3 or 4K down at 15 minutes, aka the Space Station gaming lead. Cherry, you guys,
Yeah.
it feels like it's really you and Ghost right now atop the league. This is kind of a similar position to where you were last season. Phase 2 really hit your stride. We're standing at the top. What did you learn from being at the top of the league of Phase 2 last year, and how do you think you're going to apply it this year?
I think it sucks, honestly. I don't think you want to be at the top going into a tournament or Worlds, because I think, first of all, people get cocky. Whether people want to admit or not, when you start winning, you get extra confident. You're like, yeah, we're just the best. Like, you go into scrims, you're like, I mean, we're just the best team. So you start losing, you're like, well, we wouldn't do this in SPL, so it doesn't matter. And then, like, you get bit in the ass. You're like, we shouldn't have done that. We should have been taking scrims more seriously. So hopefully we don't do the same mistake, because we did this last year for sure on Renegades. We're just just not taking scrims as seriously. So being at the top is obviously good, confidence, morale, all that, but it's also bad at the same time. So hopefully we learn from the mistakes of last year and the last phase as well.
Well, you guys look awfully locked in right now, hoping that you guys can keep it going. Thanks for the time, Cherry, and we'll talk to you soon. Let's throw it back to John Finch to close out the day.
Thanks, Agro. Always great to get a chance to hear there from Cherio. And if this is SSG not fully locked in, then the rest of the SPL be aware, for they're only going to get worse. The top of the league right now are SSG, and I'm not just making that up. 11-2. You got the standings right here in front of you. You can see for yourself. Pittsburgh Knights have been improving lately. Obey and United climbing up the rankings as well, and Radiance beginning a bit of a free fall, now at 7-5, and in danger of dropping not just down to 4th, but maybe 5th if they can't get things back on track here soon. Here's the rest of the sets that are coming up this weekend. Radiant have another one up against Ghost, a tough one, and PK and Sanguine both with a chance to overtake them. Each have sets coming up too. Our standings could look entirely different by the end of this week, Gore.
I mean, this is a really big week, specifically for Obey, because they are kind of playing, like, the determining factor, right, for the Knights and Sanguine. If they have a really good game tomorrow, then maybe all of a sudden the Knights, we stop talking about them and that potential to jump up. If they don't do so well against the Knights, but then absolutely decimate Sanguine for some reason, then all of a sudden we're in this conversation again. So I think Obey, who have been on the rise, and I think have some pretty good showings these last couple of weeks, as long as they can get their feet under them and start off running tomorrow, they could have a pretty solid weekend that will absolutely play upset.
They absolutely could. Make sure that you are back here tomorrow. We're back at our normal time tomorrow, I believe, since we only have the 2 sets. So come right back here, watch the SPL. Thank you to production for making it happen, and thank you to you for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow.